setting.
It's important.
There's not a single book or story out there that isn't heavily dependent on setting. And that's because the characters in it, like real people, are products of their time, of when and where they live, or in a single word, their setting. Welcome to ZDA Press. I'm Zach. I'm an independent self-published author who wants to help you with your book. And today I specifically want to do that with this long-awaited video on setting. Specifically, the importance of it and how you as a writer can get the most out of your setting for your story. Whether you've already nailed down a setting or it's something you're working through, these might be some interesting talking points that will get you percolating in your mind new ideas for how to set your story. Before we go any further, let's define setting, and I'd like to do that by breaking it down into its two most simple components, time and place, when and where. If either of those two are off in any way, it will negatively impact the story. But how, and why is it so important to get these two factors just right? Think of your favorite book, or if you must, your favorite movie, but please have a favorite book, please read, especially now more than ever, I beg you. Now think of the main character or your favorite character from that book or movie. Now try to imagine them in a completely different setting. Does their story still hold up? The answer is probably no, so why is that? Like I said at the beginning of this video, characters, like people, are heavily influenced by their environment, both in time and place. Their worldview has been developed by the world around them as they have known it and as they have lived in it. So if their story is going to work, the setting has to be just right. So with that definition out of the way, let's dive in deeper into setting, looking at the two components to see how we can best nail down a perfect setting for our story. And I'd like to start with time, the when of setting. This will encompass the time period that your book takes place in, which can dictate, or at the very least influence, the kind of genre that you'll write in. Of course, that's all up to you. Broad stroke, time boils down to past, present, and future, and whichever one of those three you pick can inform massive details about the specifics of when you set your book, down to the year, the month, the day of the week even. And if we look at time from a genre perspective, we're looking mainly at historical fiction, contemporary fiction, and science fiction, a la past, present, and future. Obviously, there are so many more genres besides this. I'm just trying to give you a general look at how to set your book in a certain time period, and give you a look at other kinds of books that yours will be standing shoulder to shoulder with. Time, in relation to setting, can also focus on the period of life that your character is in. Whether it's a coming-of-age story, think All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, or if it's someone old looking back on their long and storied life before they die. Think for that more like a frame story such as Frankenstein. Again, all of that will influence the setting of your book in relation to time, whether it be how the world is changing around your character in the time period that they're growing up, or in the future or in present day for them, as they're looking back with a fondness of how things used to be. Books with a foundation on their temporal setting or time-based setting, I would pick The Great Gatsby, A Gentleman in Moscow, and Ready Player One. I chose these specifically to give you a relative idea of past, present, and future, although I know A Gentleman in Moscow it's set in the past, but it's a much more modernly written book, and so I want to use that anyway because it's a great example. There's so many more contemporary books you can choose from, but I just really like that one. I like to throw it in. Now let's move on to place, the where of setting. Like time, place can inform a plethora of details about your story, such as where your characters live, from their country, to their city, to their room. All of these will contribute to where we find your character geographically or locationally in your story. If your character lives on, say, an offshore oil rig, that will inform so very much about what you're going to write next. You'll know what your character is seeing day in and day out, where they're moving around, and what they do for a living, all from that one choice. An oil rig is, of course, an extreme example, but it's to prove a point. Wherever you choose to set your character in the world, that will inform you so very much about your character's background. If we stick with this oil rig example, your readers will want to know why are we here on an oil rig alongside your main character. The task for you as an author then is to justify your setting in terms of location as it relates to your main character's goals throughout the story. And then if the setting changes beyond that, how does that align with your character's goals? Maybe your character is somebody in severe debt who took this oil rig job for how well it pays despite the dangers that he's facing in and out every single day. You see how one choice, the setting of an oil rig, is informing a character of who they are and what they want and what they're willing to do to get it? That is what we're looking for out of setting. Books with a foundation on their locational or place-based setting include The Great Gatsby, A Gentleman in Moscow, and Ready Player One. For those of you who noticed, those were the exact same books I gave you as a foundation based on their time. Bravo, you're paying attention. Extra points for you. So what's the point I'm trying to make? It's practically impossible to talk about setting by separating time and place. It simply can't be done because they're two halves of the same whole. Time and place have to come together hand in hand if your setting is going to work. Now let's use those books I gave you as some examples, bearing all that in mind about how time and place are crucial to the development of these stories. The characters in The Great Gatsby are constrained by the social dynamic of the Roaring Twenties and the Prohibition movement. That's time. They also separate themselves into two categories of people, those who come from old money and those who are rising up from new money, into the two fictional islands in New York, East Egg and West Egg, that are separated by a bay. That's place. In A Gentleman in Moscow, the main character, Count Alexander Rostov, comes under fire for poetry he wrote as well as having a title, which have been deemed counter-revolutionary by a board of commissars that have just overthrown the Russian monarchy. Time. He is then sentenced to life under house arrest in the Metropole prison in Moscow, where he spends the rest of his days bounding up and down the staircases, retiring to his secret closet study, and waiting guests in the dining room. Place. The characters in Ready Player One have a terrible quality of life as they are recuperating from a prior global war, and they use the advanced technology at their disposal to escape it. Time. Many of these characters are living in a junkyard of stacked RVs that resemble apartments, and so to escape this specifically, they go somewhere called the Oasis, a virtual reality world that allows them to go wherever they please, including a swath of iconic locations from across pop culture. Place. This is what I mean when I say that setting, which consists of time and place, has to be just right if your story is going to work. If you look back at those examples and you try to swap anything out for something else, it all falls apart. And if you've read any of these books, can you see how time and place, setting, affects the characters and the choices that they make? Jay Gatsby starts out dirt poor but becomes a millionaire selling bootlegged alcohol over the counter at drugstores during the Prohibition era. Count Rostov watches an ever-changing Russia through the windows of the Metropole and hears about it through whispers of the guests that he entertains, all the while waxing nostalgic about the country that he used to know and how beloved it was to him before the dominoes of change began to fall. Wade Watts spends all of his time in the Oasis, the virtual world, because of a contest set out by the creator of the Oasis, and whoever wins this contest will take control of the Oasis as well as inherit the creator's millions of dollars, which Wade only wants so he can get himself and his family out of poverty. The choices these characters make and the lives they live are determined by their setting, when and where they live, time and place. They're dealt a hand and they have to play with what they've got, which is why it is so crucially important for you, the dealer, to know exactly which cards you want them to have. Now, we've done a lot of talk throughout this video about setting in relation to the characters in a story, and kind of like with time and place, it's very difficult to separate setting from character because, as we've just seen, the two are entwined. So, your setting can inform a lot about your characters, but the inverse is also true. For me personally, when I've plotted out my books in the past, character and setting can become kind of a chicken and egg scenario. Sometimes I start with character, sometimes I start with setting. I know for my first novel, The Midnight Ruby, I started with characters because I kind of knew roughly who they would be and what kind of journey I wanted them to go through along the plot. After I nailed down a setting, specifically choosing time and place, Las Vegas in the 1950s, that setting allowed me to explore and inform so much about my characters and flesh out their plot with a little more specificity. For my second novel, Somebody to Hate, I more or less started with setting. For very specific reasons that I will not get into in this video, because we don't have that kind of time, and I probably won't ever get into, but we'll see. I set the book specifically in the year 1982. That always was going to happen. And the precise location I chose was London, England. And again, all of these are external reasons that have nothing to do with the book, but kind of. I already knew a lot about what was going to happen in the story from a character perspective, and so I focused a lot on the setting, specifically the historical fiction aspect of it from London in 1982, and used all of what I could find to my advantage to create a compelling murder mystery. So, bearing all that in mind, here's where a bit of directed application comes in. How do you, as a writer, choose the perfect setting for your story? Well, here's a few things to think about. What kind of themes are you going to discuss in your book? What time and place would be a great backdrop to enforce those themes for your story? Have you gotten to do any traveling in your life? If so, definitely use that in your story. That inherent feeling of familiarity will come through, and it could possibly save you a lot of time on research. Believe me, I know. What genre do you want to write in? If you're looking for a science fiction or fantasy, a lot of times you'll get to create a lot of that world yourself. The challenge then is to be able to make sure you have a dedicated backstory for your world that your characters know and that influences them as characters. People talk about the happenings in the real world all the time, which is, of course, our setting is people, and characters do the same if they're written properly. Those are just a few things you can bear in mind when you're working on setting throughout your book, and I really hope that they help, especially with everything that has gone into this video and how long it's taken to get to you. Again, for those of you who've been here, this video has been a long time coming. But I do hope that all of this has at least sparked your mind into how important setting is in your story and how to get it just right. Again, it's very difficult to separate setting into its two halves and look at them independently from each other when they have to go together for the whole thing to work. But what I've tried to do here is to focus on each of those halves as much as possible and then show you how they work together and how you can use them together to get the most out of setting in your story. But with all that being said, if you have any questions about setting, characters, or anything else for your book, please let me know down in the comments below. I'll be happy to get back to you and give you any help that I can. And while we're speaking of characters, if you need help fleshing out some of yours, head on over to my website, www.zdapress.com. There you can download my free character creation tool. It's a list of over 200 questions that I designed to help you create a fully realized three-dimensional character. Also, while you're there, if you need an editor or a cover designer for your book, head on over to the Services tab and you'll see all the ways that I can help you there. And if you'd like to do business with me, you can get in touch with me via email at zandersonauthor@gmail.com. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, for those of you who've been here, this video has been such a long time coming, and now I'm so happy to finally give it to you. For updates on future books, you can find me on Instagram at ZachAndersonAuthor with underscores in between, and of course, I'm right here on YouTube. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as it would greatly help out the channel in these early days, and as always, I will see you in the next one.